I vividly remember we played. I couldn't have been more than 14. We played uh, Honey Baked in an exhibition game preseason, and I was gonna look at this up before we started, but I forgot to. I wanted to see how many kids on that Honey Baked team went on to get drafted versus our Windsor team had two kids get drafted late. That was it.
In the CHL.
Yeah, for in the OHL. So, anyways, I didn't see how many of those kids, those Honey Baked kids, were ended up getting drafted or moving on to college or whatever, but they were really good.
Do you remember any names at all?
I don't. I would if I looked it up, I'd probably recognize some of them, but maybe I'll do it after just for shits. But anyways, they were a good team, really good team. And that Detroit loop that you coached in is awesome. That's your Bell Tire comp you wear, Honey Baked, Little Caesars, Victory Honda, etc. They're those teams are usually pretty strong. It's an off year if they have a weak team, and so I remember going into that game as the player. It was like we're gonna get smashed. Like that was the attitude, right? It was like we're gonna get smashed, and that wasn't wrong. It was like that is what is gonna happen. And I remember we go into the game, and the game starts, and we're kind of hanging in okay, and then the rails fall off, and it ends up being like 8-1 or 9-1 or whatever the score was. Big spread. So we get back into the room after the game, and the coach was like all mad. So I remember sitting there, and I'm like, trying to be like upset and whatever, because that's the expectation when you lose a game like that. But I remember sitting in the dressing room, and I'm like, is he actually mad about this? Like, I remember thinking this, like when I was 14, I was like, I'm not even really mad. I was like, I'm sitting here trying to play the part of being mad, but I knew they were going to smash us when we came here. So why is he acting like we didn't play well, or we should have done better, or we should have done this different or done this different, when I clearly, everyone in the building knows we're going to come in and get rocked. So with that in mind, I remember thinking about my coach, like, how could you be like ripping us or mad at us or cussing us out or even being disappointed? Like maybe there's a degree of disappointment for effort.
Question for you though, to interject. Your coach play ever?
No.
So
No.
that could
not that I'm aware of any high level.
Okay. That could be the lack of understanding of how hard the game is when you're playing against superior talent, possibly. And I don't even cut you off more, but that could be his emotions might be a reflection of just being insecure, just like so don't understand that you guys just didn't try hard enough, but you were just totally outmatched, and maybe just embarrassed or didn't know what to do himself, and it was like taking out on you guys.
Yeah, and this is exactly kind of the dynamic I want to get into. So this is why I want to do this episode, because this happens a lot, and there's the flip side where if you're the really strong team, so it applies both ways. So that was kind of my starting story to like set the stage of what I'm thinking about. So I want to start kind of with getting your thoughts on how that like intimidation piece plays into the mindset of young players. And then when you're young, if we stick, we'll get to the coaches kind of after, but if we stick on the player side of it, how can you get into a better mindset or go into that game or approach that situation? We could take it from the team that sucks versus the team that's good, both ways. So just like intro kind of thoughts on that from the player side.
Yeah. So I think age. I think the younger you are, the less you know. So I think I think if you're like an 8-year-old kid, like you might not know what a big center looks like, right? So if you get beat 12-0 or something like that, it's kind of like everybody's sitting there like, what happened? Or they're just so good. I don't know if you have time to prepare for anything like that. So I think being too young, there's one thing. I think you start to get to the age as maybe 10, 11, 12, like in that for sure, when you can start stacking teams or you start getting very different levels of hockey. I think kids and they've been around hockey a little bit and they know, okay, if I play these couple teams, and now they have those rankings, right? So kids and coaches actually have a clue on paper who's supposed to be good and stuff. So, but I still think when you're 8 years old, I still think those kids don't go in there saying, "Oh, we're gonna get killed," because I think they just think it's a hockey game. But I think when you get to that 10, 11, 12, then you start realize, okay, we're in one here. We better be ready, or you have an attitude. So, anyways, the intimidation is the question. So that feeling of intimidation, yeah, I think once you're aware, it could be just the rankings itself going, oh, we're playing number one. So that's why you kind of don't want to look at them as a player, but it's almost impossible not to. So the rankings, it's like, oh, we're playing number two or number three, and we're 37. Like that tells me that
And
we're
kids say that all the time. They
yeah,
know who's
yeah.
where.
It's a different world than it used
Yeah,
to
for
be, right?
sure.
Where they're from. So like again, we go, almost if you have the title, Toronto Marlies, Detroit Honey Baked. Oh God, this is a tough one. As if you're coming from like a smaller center where it's like you got one AAA team and you get 30 guys at tryout and you got 15 guys. You know what I mean? Then there's the hype. People talk about how good these teams are. Maybe there's a big name on that team that you've heard about that everyone talks about, and for sure it can be real. Like for sure it could be like um, at a certain age, anyways, where you sit there and you go, "Oh my God, this is going to be hard," or you just overthink it. Like like what we always talk about is you put pressure on yourself because you overthink that game, right? And we've all done it, right? We think if it's a championship game as a kid, as a coach, as a parent, even a lot of times you build that up like, oh, this is a big game. You got to be going, and it's like all of a sudden this game that's just a hockey game. I mean, it's a championship game or it's a big game, but in reality, they all are, and they should be all treated somewhat the same. Because you start taking different approaches or you look at it in a different way, then you're probably going to have, you know, you're going to be tense or you're going to be too hyped up or whatever, right? So I think that's the biggest thing when you're playing these games is that you can make it bigger than actually what it is. And then when you do that, it creates, maybe some tension or over hype where or and it's just the fear of the unknown, right? The fear of the unknown is real, right? Right. So you think about things that may never happen or whatever. You put pictures in your head or project something that may not be real at all.
So when you were as as dad, like we're sticking to the player side, but as dad, like did you ever have those situations? Like I know you had when you were coaching Bell Tire, you guys were the super team, but maybe if you go younger age when you were just playing dad with Chooch's AAA team before they were good, because I know when they got a little bit older they were good. But let's say when he was that 12, 13, where they were still like a lower team, what was the if did you have conversations about that kind of game, or what was the mindset, or was it something that you just had baked in right away, or what was the focus going into that game where it's like, okay, we're playing the Junior Canadians, or we're playing the Marlies, or we're playing the Chicago Mission, or whichever team, fill in the blank. What was that? What did you or what would you focus on? Like, how would you frame your mindset for the player going into that kind of
So you're talking
situation?
as a dad?
Well, if you want to answer it as the player, yes, but even as the dad, like, because if the dad is the one or the mom is the one helping to set the player's mindset going into that game, where like you're gonna go play Elgin Middlesex and get smashed,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like,
the big one that I remember with my kid was in minor bantam. Yeah, minor bantam or yeah. So U13, U14 is their first really big one was Chicago Mission, and they were the talk. Like everybody talked about how great they were and stuff like that. So I told my son, I said, you guys are playing a really good team today. So, but you guys have some players and you guys can probably hang in there with them. You just got to have an A game. So that's all I really said to him. But as a player goes, when you're looking at these things, I mean, you this is where parents and coaches could be good is give them a little bit of guidance of like you never you could anybody can win any game, and but you just have to have you got to be on. You have to be willing to work. You have to be willing to do the little things. Like you have to be on because they can expose you very quickly. And that's actually what happened. It was a really tight game until the last couple minutes. And it was like bang bang, and it ended up 3-1 or 4-1. And just because they had those extra guys that can do extra things and matched up against the wrong guys or whatever. But the thing is like it's youth hockey and you know I'm always big on making the game just a game. Like it doesn't matter who you're playing. Because I just see it in the OHL all the time, right? Like you said earlier, you get a team that is a last place team playing a good team, and all of a sudden you go, oh, they won last night. It's like you can win every night, any night, depending on how you play. So I think when you talk to when you're talking to your kids and you know you're in for a game, I think it's not overwhelming them with um, how good the other team is, and not pretending that you're so good either. It's focusing on your details and focusing. Having a plan would work too, but focusing on your details and understanding that it's okay to say that we're playing a very good team, but it's also I believe in you guys to as a parent, as a kid, I believe in you guys that you can hang in there. You can, it's going to be a great game. And as long as we do A, B, C, D. So maybe the focus is on what that other team's strength may be and how you negate that, and what our strengths can be to negate that. So um, typically, if you're playing a big center, you're going to have not a big centerman, but uh, a team from a big center. That team probably has a lot more firepower. It might be, instead of having one or two goal scorers, it might be eight guys that can put the puck in the net. Instead of having one guy that can skate real well, there might be, or three guys that skate real well, might have a whole team that does. You might have, instead of a couple guys that can really make nice plays, you might have two lines or three lines that do, right? So that's what you're up against. So I think for the most part, going in there 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 probably is that if you go there and try to go in a track meet with them, that's not a good plan. So it's going in there and putting a lot of pride in all those little things that we talk about all the time, is the blocking shots, the winning faceoffs, taking care of the middle of the ice, frustrating the other team, doing all the things that get them off their game if you can. And if you can get the other team off their game, maybe that's the key to frustrating them, right? If you frustrate them, maybe that gets them away from their team. Because I know this for a fact of coaching, being on both sides, as a player, as a coach, as a whatever, being on both sides, is when you play team that you're supposed to be better than and they're frustrating you, it's really, really frustrating. And guys can have attitudes because a lot of times on the better teams, they don't think it's not supposed to happen. So it's supposed to be easy. And if you're in their face and you're not getting the opportunities, or you're getting denied, or you're getting just roughed up a little bit, it can change the attitude of a team real, like big time. That doesn't mean that you're going to win. It doesn't mean that you're not either. But maybe that expected, 6-0 win is a 3-2 game or a 2-1 game or something like that.